Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And on this episode, we got to talk about the basis of where football starts. That is the trenches. You got the O line, the D line. And, this episode, we're going to focus on the offensive line. And I wanted to bring someone in that definitely knows his way in the trenches. That would be Mr. George Foster. What's going on, man?
What's going on with you, man? I'm excited to be here to talk to you, man. And we can talk about some O-line play and just getting the football, man. This is you're my first show this getting into this football season, man. So I'm glad to get my feet back wet and get into the season to talk ball, man.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. We were saying when the draft was here, it was like, man, it's such a long way away. Nah,
Right.
It creeps up quick.
And people are practicing for real.
Right.
So, yeah, it's around the corner for real. Once you see the helmets go on, you know it's real.
That's right. Well, to me, once you see them shoulder pads go on, but the helmets, yeah, you still out there moving around, and and even though you don't have the shoulder pads on and stuff like that, you still moving. It ain't like you just out there just gliding, whatever. No, y'all touching each other out there.
No doubt. It's work. You putting in the sweat. It's the summer, and we're talking about the AFC South. I know Indianapolis is a little bit north, and they're part of the AFC South. But the rest of these teams, and you out here in this weather, is real.
Oh yeah. Definitely. The weather tells no lies, and it makes either heroes or cowards of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of if you're watching the show right now, you see that Mr. Foster has a large G behind him. And for those that don't know, and they're not in the SEC, that means University of Georgia football. So I want to start this show talking about the Georgia Bulldogs and some Bulldogs that are in the NFL that are making headlines and doing some things, and whether it be for a long time or they're kind of just now getting into the game. And I want to start with one Georgia Bulldog that definitely did his thing in his rookie season. That would be Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, 112 receptions, 1,194 yards, and 5 touchdowns in his rookie season. Now, George, I got to ask, did you expect him to put up numbers like that in his rookie season?
You never can tell, but I'm not surprised at all. To say what I expected, it's hard to expect something from a rookie. It's just a tough position to be in. But what I do know is he's the most physically gifted, trait-wise tight end that I've probably have seen. I do think he's probably the best tight end in college football history. You just don't get what he possesses in that package too often. The speed, the acceleration, the ability to catch any and everything. He displayed that in college, so it's not surprising that he got a quick start in the NFL and was able to produce at a high level. So I'm not surprised at all, man. Brock is the real deal.
Now, I will say that he did a lot of that, and he was basically the primary weapon on that team, and people knew he was getting the football, and he still did what he did, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, what people don't tend to realize is that certain traits are traits, and exceptional traits, they translate to every level. I say it all the time. People talk about where kids played and what people who they didn't face and this. Now, somebody like Brock did it against the best competition there is in college football. I'm not sure what it was in high school, but people talk about, for instance, I put in the basketball terms, with Zion Williamson. oh, look at those kids he was playing against, in high school. And then, okay, so he went to Duke, and then we see what happened at Duke. And then we got to the NBA, and we see what happened in the NBA. Traits are traits. They're going to translate wherever you are, and it doesn't matter. It's just a matter how well you adapt to the rest of the game. As far as the traits concerned, though, Brock, man, he's elite. As far as speed goes, as far as burst goes, as far as he's probably not asked to do a lot of inline blocking, but his hands are top tier. So like he's gonna be a mismatch for most people in the NFL, most defenders in the NFL. So you expect that from him.
Yeah, definitely. I'm wondering what's going to happen in year two. Now that people have tape on them, I'm very interested. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think in year two that they're going to devise some type of plan to kind of slow him down, or do you think he's just going to continue to do the same things he's doing, especially with Pete Carroll as head coach and different
It's, go-
offensive scheme?
it's gonna be tough, but at the same time, uh, so yes, they're gonna key in on Brock. You have to account for him, but also you have Ashton Genty. I believe, didn't they draft another tight end or get another tight end?
I
A
am
high level tight end, I think.
I'm
Um,
not for sure, but they do have
yeah,
Jacoby Myers still out there. That he's not great, but he's not a guy that's going to
yeah.
he's a guy that's going to make some plays though.
Myers requires attention. Myers
Hmm.
requires attention for sure. It's just a matter of how they do at QB. Who they have? They have Geno now.
Yeah, Gino. Yeah,
Is that Geno is the quarterback now? And
yeah. He's still not right back, by the
he's been
way.
throwing the ball well the last few years.
Hmm. Yeah, he's still
Say
not
what
right
now?
back. He said he's still not right back, by the way. He wrote that. They said they wrote him off, but he ain't right back. He still ain't right back. So he's still cashing in at the bank as well. So he's doing this thing. But we want to
No
take it
doubt.
now from out. We're gonna take it now from out west. We're gonna move it over to northeast, Philly to be exact. I mean, you may as well say that the University of Georgia has like a satellite campus in Philadelphia with as many Philadelphia Eagles draft picks that were came from the University of Georgia, and one of them was Jalen Carter. Of course, to me, he's the anchor of that defensive line. When he decides he wants to be great and wants to turn it on, there's no one that can stop him, as we saw again and again and again in the playoffs. I mean, just what can you say just about Jalen Carter? I mean, you got Nakobe Dean up there. He was doing this thing at linebacker until he got injured. You got Nolan Smith Jr. He ended up having 4 sacks in the playoffs. He had 6 the entire season. Ended up having 4 sacks in the playoffs, and all those sacks, key sacks. I mean, just what the University of Georgia is making a huge impact on that Philadelphia team, especially their defense. I mean, what can you just say about the caliber of player that is just landing in Philadelphia one and just the things that they're doing up there?
Well, I think when you watch the University of Georgia play, you know that one, they're gonna be ready on game day. They're gonna be disciplined. You know that they're gonna be uh physical. You know that they're gonna be, you know, a player that has won before, especially in the last few years. So it's not a surprise that those guys are playing well up there. And at the same time, they love those guys up there. And it's not a coincidence that they keep bringing in those guys. A lot of teams may be like, are we doing too much? Or do we have too many of them? No, you do what works. you get good
Mhm.
pro ready football players, and you bring them into your team, and you coach them up. And that's what Philly has done. I was just up in Philly, a couple weeks ago for Brian Dawkins' Impact Foundation golf tournament. And you meet new people, and you meet some people and tell them about where I'm from and where I went to school, and they always want to talk about the Philly Dogs. You know what I mean? So it's they appreciate those Philly dogs up there, and they're excited about that team, and they got others that's stepping up. I think I read the other day that Smile Munden is getting some first team reps, and Keely Ringo is in
Mhm.
line to maybe start opposite what's the rookie they had from last year? Um
Yeah,
from uh from
names
Toledo, I think.
escapes me. Name escapes me, but I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, so like it's not stopping anytime soon with those Georgia dogs.
It definitely isn't. By the way, man, I've got to ask you about Brian Dawkins, but I'm gonna ask you off air about Brian Dawkins. But yeah,
Mhm.
I've got some thoughts on Weapon X, man. I've got some thoughts on Weapon X. Man, I
Him,
saw a highlight tape of his the other day, and I was
him,
like, man, yes,
him.
definitely, definitely. Now, I'm going to end this, the Bulldogs in the NFL segment with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's a guy that's been in the NFL. I mean, honestly, when he was in college football, I still remember the game versus University of Tennessee, sideline, tears his knee to pieces,
Mhm,
and still gets drafted, goes to the Cleveland Browns, and becomes a star running back for them. Now, of
mhm,
course, he suffered an injury last season that didn't allow him to complete his arc in terms of finishing his contract there, and now he is in Houston, which some people are surprised by. So, can you just looking at? I mean, I just want to kind of visit the stable of running backs for Georgia for a minute. I mean, you've got, a James Cook right now that's in the NFL. But
mhm.
you also have you have Chubb, you had DeAndre Swift, you had Todd Gurley. I mean, you had a boatload of backs come from the University of Georgia. Sonny Michelle, who's been around for a little bit, he was around for a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
all these running backs, man. I mean, can you
and
just? I mean, how? What's that?
and so you got Zeus out there in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
Mhm,
Right.
yep. So, a lot of backs over the years. Garrison Hurst,
Yes.
you know, Herschel
Terrell
had his
Davis.
time. Terrell Davis, Rodney Hampton, um,
Yeah.
Not George Rogers. That's South Carolina. But
Mhm.
what's my man's name? Uh, he was around the same time as Rogers. Uh, I
Uh,
forget. You had Robert Edwards, and then you had
mhm.
you know
It's
special
all these
backs.
great backs. All these
Guys
great
that
all
made
these
you got DeAndre Swift, guys that
yeah.
made names for themselves in different ways, anywhere, and like it's just it's almost running back you for a minute.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out in my mind. I'm like, I mean, just the stable of running backs, the rich history of running backs. Why does nobody though, I know that at one point Tennessee was wide receiver you. But
Mhm.
why does no one speak of Georgia and the stable of running backs and their rich history over decades of running backs? I mean, I'm just thinking about all the running backs you just mentioned now and all the running backs that I mentioned previously. That's a lot of
Mhm.
good running backs. Why do you think nobody talks about the great stable of running backs that Georgia has had over decades?
I don't know, man, because there have been backs from other places. USC had a nice, some backs over the years. But I don't know, running like I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. but but a lot of people don't like to give Georgia a lot of credit for a lot of things. What they can do, what Georgia does do well is put football players into the NFL.
Mhm,
They're in the top 3 to 5 every yearly
mhm,
with guys on rosters. And they just play good, really good football. I played with a lot of NFL guys just in my time at Georgia.
mhm,
So it's just, and they're always quality guys, very
mhm.
few character issues, very few off the field issues. They always play good football and always good teammates.
I hear you there. And now I want to get your thoughts. Chubb and Joe
Yeah.
Mixon are now together in the backfield in Houston. I mean, that's two ornery, tough running backs that you don't
Yeah.
want to see when it gets cold. I mean, what do you think of just that pairing in Houston?
Listen, if Chubb is healthy, as he says he is, and as he looks, uh, team's gonna have some issues, man. I like the way football is headed. You know, there's been some evolution in the passing game and whatnot, but there's also been some evolution in the run game too, with how these teams
Mhm.
block. You see how Baltimore does it up there with Todd Monken and some of the stuff he did at Georgia too. And it's been in the same way they do in Philly, you know, with Saquon. And it's been revolutionary of sorts. Teams that you have teams that have always ran the ball well that continue to do it, but they're doing it different ways and playing off the passing game. And in my opinion, truly, teams are realizing that real football wins now. You know, the gimmicks are over. What are you
Mhm.
gonna do when it's time to line it up and play real football? And I think teams are realizing that, and the value of the running back has come back, seeing that these teams like Baltimore and Philly, and what they're doing, even Houston is making in the playoff with Mixon, and I'm trying to think who else, but you know, you
Detroit.
got Detroit. Listen,
Mhm.
Detroit got a two-headed monster that's sickening. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so teams are
Green Bay
real.
too.
Green
Josh
Bay,
Jacobs.
yes, teams are realizing that this is how you're gonna get deep in the playoffs and possibly win a championship is up front and in that backfield. You
Mhm.
can't put it all on the quarterbacks these days. Defensive, defensive defensive players and defensive coaches have gotten, you know, offense has expanded, but defense, I think defenses. You ever see how something lead by storm? So you, you know these defensive coaches are smart.
Mhm.
They figure out how to stop XYZ. You know what I mean? But what you can't stop is a team. Well, you're going to have to account for the big fellas up front and those running backs. And there's only one way to do it, and that's to play man on man football. And it's
Mhm.
who's assembling the best team to do. You know what I mean? It all comes down to that, and I love it. I'm old school, and I'm a lineman. So
Mhm.
I love the way football is going.
So it's you got the assembling on one side, you got the Avengers, and the other side you might have Thanos or Doctor Doom. Hey,
Hmm.
it's a little Marvel talk for those that don't know.
Yeah. So to get back to what Texans doing, D'Amico knows what he's doing.
Mhm.
D'Amico's from that SEC. He's a tough nosed guy. He understands what it's gonna take. You know, he's had that taste of the playoffs. Did they win a game last year? I think they won.
They
I think
won
they
they
won.
won a game last 2
They
years.
won a game the last 2 years. So he's licking his chops. He's gotten the taste of what it feels like, and he knows what it's going to take to take it further in the next step. And that's essentially what Philly did, right? They took
Mhm.
that next step with that run game, and the run game took them in. We got him to where maybe Saquon didn't have the biggest game of his career in the Super Bowl, but it helped get them there, and it helped
Right.
keep teams honest. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And if you stay honest with the threat of Saquon, they got some bad jokers on that outside that you got to account
Mhm.
for. 6 and 11 tight end. You got some people you got to account for. So
Mhm.
the run game. I love the way, again. I'll repeat it again. Love the way football is headed.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to switch over. We talked about the Bulldogs in the NFL, but this is the AFC South show. And I do kind of want to talk about, the AFC South teams just a little bit. want to start with the team that had the number one overall pick. That's Tennessee Titans. Of course, the Titans revamped their offensive line just a little bit this offseason. They brought in Dan Moore from the Steelers to the Titans. Of course, a lot of people either love the pickup or they hate the pickup. There's really no in between from what I've heard from people. Or there's some people that are just like, okay, let me see if this happens and works. They also picked up Kevin Zeitler from the Detroit Lions, and they are switching J.C. Latham from left tackle to right tackle. So, a lot of talk about Dan Moore was about, some of his numbers in terms of being pass rushed and how that was, off or kind of concerning. As a former offensive lineman in the NFL, can you kind of talk about, in terms of pass setting and things like that, how, it varies maybe to different pass rushers, perhaps in terms of speed and things like that? George, you there? All right, we lost George for a minute there. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Tennessee Titans, and of course the offensive line there with, of course, the Tennessee Titans, which they brought in Dan Moore Jr. this offseason, big contract. A lot of people were kind of interested and wondering if that was going to work out or not. And of course, I asked George about the offensive line. And George, what part of did you miss in terms of me talking about the offensive line with the Titans?
You started talking about the acquisition of Dan Moore,
Okay,
and that it got kind of shaky after that.
got you. So basically, what I was talking about is, of course, they acquired Dan Moore from the Steelers. A little bit kind of, I would say some Titans fans loved it, some Titans fans hated it. There was really no in between with a lot of Titans fans, unfortunately. Of course, moving J.C. Latham from left tackle to right tackle, and now you've got Kevin Zeitler as their right guard. Um, one thing I want to focus on is Dan Moore, because Dan Moore's bad grades that I believe he got was because of pass rush and taking on the pass rush. So can you kind of speak to, in terms of a pass rush, how it kind of varies maybe from defender to defender in terms of how you get your sets, how deep you go with your sets, and how hard you push out to protect or anything like that?
Uh, we start off with Dan Moore. I think he has some ability. He's long. You know what I mean? He's pretty decent athlete. Uh, I think that Bill Callahan he's the man. He's
Mhm.
the GOAT, as far as, the last, who knows how he's been in, what, 30 years. He's been in a very long time. And I've seen what he's done with some guys. I've seen what he's done with guys, during my time as a scout that I didn't think, well, for lack of better words, worth anything. I've seen
Mhm.
him get some use out of them, whether it was for a few years or, in spot duty. I seen him get work out of guys that probably shouldn't even be in the league for as long as they were, but he molded them into serviceable players. So I have no doubt that he can do some things with Dan. Uh Fans have to realize, linemen, especially really good, like the top tier linemen, they don't hit the street. You know what I mean? So if
Right.
you get somebody, they're gonna have some warts, but you can win with those guys. You can win with those guys, especially if they're coached up. So where the Titans were really bad at right tackle last year, really bad. It
Mhm.
was
It
they
was
had some
rough. Yeah.
issues.
It was
They had
rough.
some issues at right tackle, and so I think JC can move into the right side. It You shore up that problem, because
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure he's going to play better than my guy from last year. I forget his name, but
No, don't
he
mention that to
struggled,
Titans fans. They might get mad.
and huh?
Don't mention that
Why
Titans
would they
fans. They
get
might get
mad?
mad, man. Man, don't mention that man's
They like
name.
him?
'Cause all I can say is I said his name a couple times and they got mad at me.
What, they liked him?
No, they didn't
Oh,
like
okay.
his performance. Yeah.
Yeah, he struggled. He struggled big time. Shout out to the to the fella. I hope he gets better. And it's never over. You're always, a commodity as a lineman. So you're gonna get some. You're gonna get another shot. You just got to do your best with it. Maybe you can turn it around. And sometimes there's a lot of stuff that people don't see that has to do with scheme, communication, this, that, and the other. So who knows? Who knows what the issue was with them last year, especially
True.
being in an offense that's newer. You know what I mean? But they struggled at that position last year. And you're moving a guy over there that played in the same offense the previous year and has all the potential in the world, Pro Bowl potential, big fella, strong, can move. He add Dan Moore. I think with Dan Moore and his experience there, like I said, he has length, he has some athleticism. He's get some good coaching, and I think they'll be better. Skoronski, he's gonna be a really good player. He's already shown what he can do. And if Zeitler, I know Zeitler is kind of young, long in the tooth, but you don't worry about that as much with linemen. It's kind of they have that wisdom. As long as they're healthy and they can move around, you love having the OGs in the room.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I do want to also mention is J.C. Latham is not only moving positions, but he moved some weight off his body. He lost some weight this all season as well. So,
Mhm.
what can you say that is the biggest thing that you kind of pick up? I would say, when you lose weight, is that I know it can be a plus in some aspects and maybe a minus in others, just depending upon who you're taking on. Can you kind of speak to what maybe the pluses and minuses may be of J.C. Latham losing weight?
Um, you just want to keep your strength. You want to make sure you're as strong as possible. That's a big key to offensive line play. I know it sounds cliche or kind of like duh, but not everybody's strong, man. A lot of big people are not as strong. Sometimes you have to. I believe in a baseline level strength to be able to play NFL offensive line. You know, um, when I was scouting, you had different levels or different colors, and good started at red. For me, and then you had red, and then you had blue and whatnot. Blue was exceptional, um, and so like red, I felt like red was the minimum that I would want my lineman. Red strength, which is good strength. You didn't have to be, you didn't have to, lift the house. You didn't have to move, mountains, but you had to be red. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so, long as, long as with losing that weight, he's keeping his strength up, it could be good. It'll help you move easier. It's definitely easier to move when you get that weight off of you. And it's is paramount at tackle, being able to move. These guys on the edge now they're different athletes. You know what I mean? I watched some of my old film, that grainy pre HD, NFL film. And one thing that stands out is some of the guys I was facing. know, I played right tackle with some big your big rock heads, that was gonna stone you at the line of scrimmage. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? They didn't run 4 or 5. You got guys that run like DBs and receivers playing on the edge now. So you gotta be able to move.
Right. Right.
So
You definitely do.
losing that weight is probably gonna help him.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be interesting to watch as well. He came back, he cut the locks off, he lost weight, switched positions. I'm like, man, what are the changes you got left for us, JC Latham,
Hey
man?
man, the fella's trying to get right.
Yeah, he definitely is, man. He definitely is. Speaking of trying to get right, I do want to talk about the Houston Texans and their offensive line next. But of course, I do have to mention the touring the AFC South inbox. We've got Corey Jackson Sr. Of course, he coming through saying, "Go Dogs." So he's a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
I can
So,
dig it.
and he also is a Titans fan. So he jumps in and says, "JC is going to be a stud." So there we go.
Mm.
All right, but yeah, getting back
Yes,
to the
sir.
show,
I can
we got to
dig
talk
that.
about these Houston Texans. And, hopefully this all season they get it together. But boy, oh boy, last season, it wasn't very much to write home about because CJ Stroud was running around for his life back there in the backfield for the Houston Texans. Now, they did, they were going to make some changes, and you expected them to make some changes. But did you expect them to trade Laramie Tunzel and Kenyon Green, two of their starters this offseason, to the NFC East at that?
Hmm. It just depends on what you want to do. No, I didn't expect it, but sometimes just depending on what the direction the team is, you have to. The only way to receive something back is to trade, solid players, solid to good players, and nobody wants trash, trash. Nobody's trading trash for trash.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you want something, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know what the Texans got back for
For,
Tunsil.
for Tunzel, they got some picks.
Yeah,
For Kenyon Green, they got CJ Gardner Johnson. So now they've got
yeah,
probably one of the best safety groups in the NFL, in
yeah,
my opinion. They do, if
yeah,
not the best.
yeah. I think that's a good pickup. You know what I mean? That's a good pickup for the Texans. Um, you have a team that took, a lineman that was, up and down. You know what I mean? He could stand to be better, be more consistent. You don't know what you're gonna get from him, but it's a lineman. Lineman come at a premium. I don't care, you know,
Mhm.
especially competent linemen. When I say competent linemen that have started, linemen that you're not gonna crap your pants if you have to put them out there. You know what I mean? Yeah, you might want better from certain ones, but you at least want some linemen you could throw out there and get some good work out of them. But to get an established, safety in return, the Super Bowl safety, one that knows how to win games, and I trust D'Amico's, um, I guess, evaluation of the situation. You know what I mean? And so they're gonna be, you got Sting back there. You got my bulldog, of course, Lassiter, who's a
Yeah.
dude.
Good.
You know what I mean? And what's my other guy back there? That be smacking.
You got
What's his name?
Jalen Petrie. You got
Petrie. He
Bullock.
be smacking, smacking. He be smacking. You got him, and then
Yeah.
you have Gardner Johnson. Like, it's
You got Bullocks back there too. That's another guy
yeah,
that was a
yeah,
rookie last year, and he led them in interceptions at the safety
exactly.
spot.
So they, you know, I understand building the secondary. You know what I mean? Yes, you give up some linemen. Hopefully you get to, I don't know. I can't remember what they did in the draft lineman wise, if they got any more. Uh Secondary is important in
They drafted they drafted all tackle. They drafted the offensive tackle from Minnesota. His last name's Ursery,
yes.
so he could potentially end up being a starter.
Yeah. So, it's building. You got you need a line and you need a secondary in today's game. You know what I mean? So sometimes you got to trade to make that happen. You know, and so that's what I think. What Laramie went to the Commanders.
Commanders.
Yeah, Laramie went to Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great pickup for them. You know what I mean? So if you feel like you can replace that production and get some
Mm-hmm.
picks, you know what I mean? Sometimes you have to do that. And you're probably trying to get younger. But I don't think they did. What Cam Robinson been around a minute.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask
Mhm.
you about. You know, they
Yeah.
brought in, you know, they Laramie Tunsil leaves, Cam Robinson comes in. Now, those in the
But
AFC
you're not
South are very
paying, you're not
distinguished
you're not
about.
paying, you're not paying the same ticket though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're not. But
Big difference in the
but
ticket.
I will say, but I definitely will say that Jacksonville fans are kind of rubbing their hands together like Birdman because they saw this in Jacksonville for about 4 or 5 years and they wanted him
Mhm.
out of there pronto. So now that he's on the opposite team of them, they are
Mhm.
excited to see him. And that's not good for Houston, in my opinion, if he starts potentially.
Yeah. Well, it's always there's always a chance for redemption. It's redemption
That's
time.
true
You
too.
know, he has ability. You know, he's been a starter in this league. You know, they do have that going for him. You know, it's just a matter of okay, what you gonna do? You gonna barbecue a mildew? Like I said, linemen come at a premium. You want as many of them as you can get, as many of them that you don't feel like you feel like you can throw out there. You know, so they, probably doing something else with the money that they saved from trading Laramie. But we'll see, man. We'll see. I know he gets, Cam Robinson. Everybody, everybody wants quote better until until they realize
Mm-hmm.
that it ain't a whole lot of linemen out
I
there.
know. Yeah, it ain't a
I
whole
tell I
lot of
tell
better.
I tell people all the time. Next time you go to the grocery store, tell me how many 6'6", 320-pound guys you see. That alone, you're probably gonna tell me, uh, I didn't see any. And then forget the size. You're gonna have to. Yeah, how many guys on the earth are that size, can run, can think on the fly? Probably the smartest guys on the field. It's not many. You know what I mean? So yeah, you want something. Yes, he gets every now and then he gets pushed back into the quarterback. Some stuff you're just gonna have to deal with, and
Mhm.
sometimes some of those things you have to deal with scheme. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's not many competent offensive linemen walking the earth, and
Mhm.
so be thankful, that you got one. I don't know what they replaced Robinson
Well,
with.
I'm about to touch on that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, and then Cam Robinson, he's in a spot where he can actually, redeem himself, and
Mhm.
I guess, go back up the ladder, and maybe make himself a nice chunk, good chunk of change. Or it could
Yeah.
be that Ursa restarts and he's the backup. A lot of different things could happen there in Houston. There is no guarantees when it comes to that offensive line, and of course, like you mentioned, guarantees definitely wasn't what Cam Robinson, thought. They thought he guaranteed would be the offensive tackle. He wasn't necessarily their offensive tackle of the future. They traded him to Minnesota. Now they have Anton Harrison, who they drafted, and Walker Little. So Anton Harrison, I believe, would be his third year this year, and Walker Little was a career backup offensive tackle. Now he's slated to be the starting offensive tackle, potentially. So with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see those two pairing together, especially with the harassment that Trevor Lawrence was dealing with last season. They harassed him so bad, he hurt his shoulder and he was out for the year. So Yeah. So about that replacing of Cam Robinson, that's going to be an interesting proposition going into this season.
Yeah. What I do know is they better get it right. You know,
Yeah.
you paid the quarterback for a reason, and what we do see often is that teams that don't get the offensive line working right, they don't fare very well. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So they got to figure out, and they got to figure out fast. And you want to keep your quarterback, clean as possible. So they have some work cut out for them. You know, they got who they feel like their quarterback of the now and future is. They got some weapons on the outside. They got some backs. Um, it- you can waste it real fast if you don't get the guys that block. So we'll see, man. We'll see. You'll see. You got Gladstone down there. Is that his name, Gladstone?
Yep.
Yeah, got a new guy. Uh, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure he understands.
Liam Cohen down there yelling
Yeah,
Duval.
Duval. Yeah. So we'll see. I got a few friends that are, Duval fans, Jacksonville
Yeah.
Jaguar fans, ex Jacksonville Jaguar players. And so I'll be looking forward to seeing how they respond to the team this year. But they gotta get it right on O line.
Yes, they definitely do. And one thing they did do to try to get it right in the offensive line is they let go of Brandon Sheriff. I remember when he was very highly regarded with the Washington Commanders, came to the Jacksonville Jaguars free agency, and it just seems like every year he's gotten a little less, what he was before he came to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you'll know the correct or know the any of specifics on this one. Um, but when do you know when you're starting to lose it as an offensive lineman? I mean, I know there's got to be some signs that when you're playing that you're kind of noticing. But what are the signs? Do you notice any signs of any other players? Did you notice any signs when you were playing? Of if you were like, okay, I ain't got this
It's,
anymore, so I gotta go with this.
yeah, it's just physically, man. Sometimes, and the aging or the breaking down process comes faster for some people. It comes later for others. You had Andrew Whitworth
Hmm.
played forever. You know, play forever at a high level. His body just could take it. You have what's my man? I hate how these names just pass me. Right tackle in Philly. I evaluated him coming out. Um, uh, number 65.
Come on, Lane
Gonna be
Johnson.
yeah, Lane Johnson gonna be a Hall of Famer. Lane Johnson. This is going on year what 13, 15, somewhere around in there. Yeah,
Hmm.
right around 13. And so and then you got other guys that it starts breaking down year 6, 7, 8. You know what I mean? It depends on the person. And so but I still think Sheriff has a little bit left in the tank. As long as he can get long as he can get healthy. He's still smooth in the run game. He still has somewhat of an anchor in the pass game. But, you know, it's just maybe he needs a change of scenery. Um, Maybe he needs to get healthier. But we'll see. I know I was high on him coming out as a guard. He played tackle at Iowa, but he was I loved how he played. You know what I mean? He was quick, fast, definitely fits the zone scheme. If you can go to a team that, is playing in the zone, has he found a team yet? I'm not
No, he
sure.
hasn't. He's still
Yeah.
out there.
If he's healthy, I don't know what the word on his medical is. Teams will know that. If he doesn't get picked up, that probably would be the case. if he's somewhat healthy, if he's healthy enough, he'll have a team. He'll have a team soon. Because, like I said, linemen are scarce. You know what I mean? I still think he has something to offer. I try to try to pick up a little bit of film on online to watch him. I'll go back and watch him on my other service. And if he's somewhat healthy, he'll find a landing spot.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
might find one in Houston. You never know.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You never know.
You
You
know,
know, they
you
do
never know.
have they are the home for former Jaguars right now because you do have Christian Kirk and you do have Cam Robinson there. So hey, might as well make it a
And
trifecta.
who are they expecting to take over for Kenyon?
For Kenyon, right now, looking at their O line, it's actually it's a battle. Basically, is what
Yeah.
I have
Why not
heard.
bring an
It's a
OG?
battle to
Why not
find
bring an
out.
OG? Why not bring an OG in? If the battle doesn't go how they expected, why
Right.
not bring the OG in there?
I know one guy they don't want to. I know one guy Houston fans have told me about that they're kind of not as high on. I mean, honestly, they don't. I've ran across some Houston fans that do not get down with Juice Scruggs for some reason. So
Hmm.
that's an interesting one. That I've heard that. I was like, I remember when he got drafted, they liked him then, and then now some fans are like, don't know about this guy. So I'm like, huh,
Yeah,
interesting. I thought that was
a
a
lot
bit
of
interesting.
fans, and I don't, I don't say this to be snooty, but most fans know what they're looking at O line play wise.
This
Just
is
being
true.
honest, it's a lot of people
This,
that are in football that don't understand O line. So I know the general public doesn't. You know,
oh, I hear you
so,
there.
so
Mhm.
not that they're wrong. I haven't watched Scruggs like that, but uh there's a good chance that they don't know what they're looking at.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. I'm throwing out there what I'm hearing. I'm not saying I
Mhm,
agree. I'm just like,
mhm.
hey, just throwing
Hey,
out there what
listen,
I'm hearing.
they could be dead right because I haven't watched the film. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But I do know that some fans don't understand what goes into playing offensive line, what they're watching. Like they don't understand sometimes that this
Like
play isn't the
combination.
lineman's fault. This sack
Yep.
wasn't the lineman's fault. It was a
Right.
three-step drop, and the quarterback held it for
Hell, the football.
a seven strap. You
Or
know what I mean?
or
Or you got a
or you got
line, you got a you got a running back, leaking out, and he trips the tackle's outside leg, and he
mhm,
stumbles and gives up, you know, the edge.
mhm,
It happens. You don't see that because you're a fan. You
mhm.
know what I mean? Things happen. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right. Definitely. And you also another thing also to mention too is that quarterbacks can also shuffle themselves into sacks too. Or they can put
no, a lot.
they can run up in the pocket into a sack. They can try to
Yeah,
run
a
around the
lot.
corner and then run themselves into one. I mean, it's a lot
No
of
question.
different things that can happen for sure. And then also,
Mhm,
the one thing that people don't talk that a lot of people don't talk about in the run game is also fits for linemen. Linemen are
mhm,
just not running around looking for everything. No, 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 no. There are fits for
mhm,
linemen, whether it's a pull, whether it's a combination block where one's going on
mhm,
the combination, one's going this get this guy, the other was going up to the next level, get the linebacker. There's all these different combinations and things that probably the average fan probably doesn't pay attention to. They just like, oh, he missed that guy, he missed the block. No, no.
mhm,
If it's combination block, they were supposed to go a certain way, but hey, the lineman you're probably looking at maybe was the one that did his job and the other one didn't.
mhm. Right.
So always so yeah, it's always that. But man,
Mhm.
I have enjoyed talking some trench play with you on this episode, Mr. George Foster. I got to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for kind of breaking down a few things, talking about the O line and talking about the different O lines going around in terms of the AFC South. I definitely got to have you on again to talk about
Yeah,
some
no doubt.
O-line play, probably a little further on the season or closer to the season. Plus, I also got to talk to you about a few other things as well. So don't hang up when we get through with the show. I got a couple more questions for you. Just not gonna keep you too long now.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media. Of course, I want to give you the platform to kind of mention all those different things. And if you have anything that you're working on, you want to tell people about.
Just George Foster 72 on everything. You'll mainly see me on Twitter or X, I guess. Nobody ever says X, but it is what it is. It's still Twitter. But George Foster
Mhm.
72, um, uh, False Dog Media is my media company. I'm gonna start doing some stuff soon. Uh, stop procrastinating. That's what I'm gonna do.
I'm gonna call you. Make sure I'm gonna
But
call you
yeah,
and
stay tuned,
tell you
man.
about it.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. But yeah, man, I'm easy to find, personable. Talk to me, holler at me. Just don't be a jerk.
All right. Well, hey, thank you again for coming on. Of course, I'm the host of the show, Mike Patton. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Of course, I will not call it X because the only X I recognize is DMX and Malcolm X. That is it. But you can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. You also find me on Blue Sky, same thing. Instagram and Threads, you can find me there at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. And you can also find me, of course, right here on Touring the AFC South on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. And we are also on YouTube, where you can see our faces and see our different reactions to different things at the Mike Patton Network. Go ahead and subscribe to all those places, drop some comments, and share. I thank you all for tuning into this episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.